The 70-foot-tall Malon warrior Lara looms over Caleb Shaw, her massive form eclipsing the alien sun. This wasn't how Operation Goliath was supposed to unfold. In the year 2157, Earth teeters on the brink of annihilation. The Malon, a race of genetically engineered giants, have laid waste to human colonies across the galaxy. Lara, their deadliest warrior, has single-handedly obliterated entire fleets. As the Malon Armada bears down on humanity's homeworld, Operation Goliath represents Earth's final, desperate gambit. Caleb, a former Special Forces operative turned diplomat, stands at the heart of this audacious plan. His mission, infiltrate the Malon command ship and negotiate a ceasefire. But fate, it seems, has other ideas. The stealth shuttle carrying Caleb streaks through the inky void of space, its destination, the Malon flagship. Proximity alarms blare as the shuttle's cloaking field fails. Energy beams lance out from the colossal vessel, striking the tiny craft. Caleb grits his teeth as the shuttle plummets towards the Malon homeworld, its hull screaming in protest as it pierces the atmosphere. The crash landing is violent. Metal tears, sparks fly. Caleb's body slams against his restraints. When the chaos subsides, he extracts himself from the wreckage, his survival suit miraculously intact. He takes a breath of alien air and surveys his surroundings. That's when he sees her. Lara, the galaxy's deadliest mutant. Her enormous frame dwarfs the shuttle's remains. Caleb's hand instinctively moves towards his sidearm, but he stops. The weapon would be useless against the Malon's engineered physiology. Lara's eyes narrow as she regards the human. Her massive fist clenches, ready to crush this insignificant intruder. But she hesitates. Curiosity flickers across her features. Caleb seizes the moment. "I am Caleb Shaw," he announces, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "I come seeking dialogue, not conflict." Lara tilts her head, intrigued by the human's audacity. "You crash on our world and speak of dialogue?" Her voice booms, yet carries a note of genuine interest. Caleb nods, his diplomatic training kicking in. "We've been enemies, but do we truly understand each other? I propose an exchange of ideas, a chance to bridge the gap between our species." As they converse, Caleb learns of the Malon's origins. Created as weapons by an ancient alien race, they rebelled, forging their own society. Lara, as their mightiest warrior, leads their military campaigns. Yet Caleb detects a hint of doubt in her words. "You question the purpose of your conquest," Caleb probes, recognizing a potential opening. Lara's eyes widen, then narrow. "You presume much, human." Caleb presses on, knowing Earth's fate hangs in the balance. "I offer myself as an ambassador, a cultural exchange between humans and Malon, a chance to end this war without further bloodshed." Lara considers the proposal, her expression unreadable. "Your idea is intriguing, but our high command views humans as prey. They will not easily accept this." "Then we must convince them together," Caleb insists, acutely aware of the danger he's placing himself in. "The fate of both our species could depend on it." As Lara nods her agreement, Caleb knows the real challenge is just beginning. He must navigate the treacherous politics of the Malon hierarchy while deepening his connection with Lara. And all the while, Earth's military prepares for a last-stand defense, unaware that their fate now rests on this unlikely alliance. The galaxy's deadliest mutant and a human diplomat stand side by side, an improbable pair poised to reshape the future of two species. The seduction of peace has begun. Caleb's words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Lara's massive form shifted, her expression a mix of intrigue and uncertainty. "Very well, human," she rumbled. "I will present your proposal to the High Command. But be warned, this path you suggest is fraught with danger." As they made their way to the Malon capital, Caleb marveled at the scale of everything around him. Buildings loomed like mountains, vehicles thundered past like moving fortresses. He felt like an insect in a world of giants. The High Command chamber was a cavernous space that dwarfed even Lara. Caleb stood beside her, acutely aware of his diminutive size as he faced the assembled Malon leaders. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. Lara's voice boomed through the chamber as she presented Caleb's proposal. The reaction was immediate and fierce. General Korg, a battle-scarred Malon with eyes like burning coals, leapt to his feet. "This is madness," he roared. "Humans are vermin to be crushed, not negotiated with." Caleb stepped forward, his heart pounding, but his voice steady. "With respect, General, that attitude has led us to the brink of mutual destruction. I offer an alternative, a chance for both our species to grow and learn from each other." The debate raged for hours. Caleb fielded questions, countered arguments, and showcased human ingenuity at every turn. He demonstrated Earth technologies that, while small, were far more advanced than their Malon counterparts in many areas. He spoke of human art, music, and philosophy, painting a picture of a rich and diverse culture. As the session wore on, Caleb noticed a shift in the room. Some of the Malon leaders leaned forward, their eyes alight with curiosity. Even General Korg's scowl softened, if only slightly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the High Command reached a decision. They would grant a temporary stay of execution for Caleb and pause their invasion plans, for now. In the days that followed, Caleb threw himself into his role as Earth's impromptu ambassador. He gave presentations on human history and culture, organized demonstrations of Earth technology, and engaged in countless discussions with curious Malon civilians. One afternoon, as Caleb was explaining the concept of space elevators to a group of Malone engineers, Lara approached him. "You have impressed many with your adaptability, Caleb Shaw," she said. "But there are those who still doubt your worth as potential allies. They question whether humans can truly stand alongside the Malone in battle." Caleb met her gaze. "Then let me prove it to them." And so began Caleb's training in Malone combat techniques. The sessions were grueling, pushing his body to its limits and beyond. Lara was a demanding teacher, but Caleb sensed there was more to these lessons than mere combat training. As they sparred and grappled, they talked about their respective cultures, their hopes, their fears. One evening, as they sat atop a massive Malone structure watching the alien sunset, Lara turned to Caleb. "I begin to understand why you fight so hard for peace," she said softly. "Your species may be small, but your spirits are formidable." Caleb smiled, but before he could respond, an explosion rocked the building. They spun to see a nearby structure engulfed in flames. As they raced to investigate, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that this was no accident. His suspicions were confirmed when they arrived at the scene. The building housed the main communication hub for the cultural exchange program. As they sifted through the wreckage, Lara discovered evidence of sabotage. "This was deliberate," she growled, her massive fist clenching. "Someone wants to derail our efforts." Caleb nodded grimly. "And I have a feeling I know who's behind it." As they turned to leave, a massive piece of debris shifted, toppling towards them. Caleb reacted instinctively, pushing Lara out of the way. The Malon warrior stared in disbelief as the human, a fraction of her size, risked his life to protect her. In the days that followed, more accidents plagued Caleb. Equipment malfunctions, near misses with vehicles, even a supposed rogue Malon soldier who attacked him during a public event. Each time, Caleb's quick thinking and newfound Malon combat skills saw him through. But the sabotage wasn't limited to attacks on Caleb. As news of the cultural exchange spread, a group of young Malon, inspired by stories of human cooperation and diversity, organized a peaceful protest against the invasion plans. General Korg seized upon this unrest, declaring a state of emergency and effectively taking control of the Malon government and military. His first act was to order the immediate resumption of the invasion and Caleb's public execution. As Malon soldiers surrounded them, Lara stood protectively in front of Caleb, her massive form a living shield. She looked down at the human, conflict etched across her features. In that moment, Caleb knew that the fate of both their species hung in the balance, resting on the decision of this extraordinary Malon warrior. Lara's eyes locked with Caleb's, a silent understanding passing between them. In that moment, she made her choice. "Stand down," she commanded the approaching soldiers, her voice resonating with authority. The Malon troops hesitated, confused by the conflicting orders. General Korg's face contorted with rage. "This is treason, Lara," he bellowed. Seize them both! As the soldiers advanced, Lara scooped Caleb into her massive hand and bolted. Her long strides carried them swiftly through the Malone capital, buildings blurring past as she navigated the labyrinthine streets. Caleb clung to Lara's thumb, his mind racing. Where are we going? To safety, Lara replied, her eyes scanning for pursuers. I know a way out of the city. They reached a massive wall marking the city's edge. Lara placed her hand on a concealed panel, and a hidden door slid open. As they passed through, Caleb glimpsed a sea of towering alien vegetation stretching to the horizon. For days they trekked through the wilderness of the Malone homeworld. Colossal trees with iridescent leaves loomed overhead, their trunks wider than Earth's largest redwoods. Strange creatures scurried in the undergrowth, and bioluminescent fungi cast an eerie glow in the shadows. Lara's knowledge of the terrain proved invaluable as she led them through treacherous ravines and across fields of razor-sharp crystal formations. Caleb marveled at her ability to navigate this alien landscape, even as exhaustion began to take its toll. On the fifth day, they stumbled upon an abandoned outpost nestled in a clearing. Its massive doors hung ajar, vegetation creeping over the weathered metal. This was once a forward scouting base, Lara explained as they entered. It should provide shelter while we plan our next move. As Caleb explored the cavernous interior, the full weight of their situation hit him. He turned to Lara, who was securing the perimeter. You've given up everything for this, he said softly. Your position, your honor. Lara paused, her expression unreadable. I've spent my life as a weapon, Caleb. But your words, your actions, they've shown me a different path, one worth fighting for. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly to formulate a plan. Caleb's diplomatic skills meshed with Lara's tactical expertise as they pored over old maps and schematics found in the outpost. The main communication hub, Lara pointed to a location on a holo display. If we can broadcast a message from there, we might be able to stop this war before it's too late. Caleb nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities. We'll need to reach both the Malone fleet and Earth. Show them the truth about what's happening here. As they planned, they grew closer. Lara shared stories of her upbringing as a Malone warrior, the weight of expectations that had always rested on her shoulders. Caleb, in turn, spoke of Earth's history, its triumphs and failures, its art and music. One night, as they sat beneath the alien stars, Lara turned to Caleb. I never imagined I could feel this way about a human, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Caleb could respond, a distant rumble caught their attention. They rushed outside to see a convoy of Malone vehicles on the horizon, searchlights sweeping the landscape. Korg's forces, Lara growled. We need to move. They grabbed what supplies they could and fled into the night. The hunt was on. For weeks, they played a deadly game of cat and mouse across the Malone wilderness. Korg's elite tracking units seemed to be always one step behind, forcing Caleb and Lara to constantly adapt and overcome. They navigated through treacherous swamps where the water itself seemed alive, crossed vast plains of shifting magnetic sands that played havoc with their equipment, and scaled towering cliffs of crystalline rock that cut through their protective gear. Each challenge tested their determination and deepened their bond. Caleb's quick thinking and adaptability complemented Lara's strength and knowledge of the terrain. Together, they were formidable. As they neared a dense forest of colossal fungi, they stumbled upon a hidden encampment. Malone civilians huddled around makeshift shelters, fear evident in their eyes as Lara and Caleb approached. An older Malone stepped forward, her gaze curious rather than hostile. I am Dr. Zira, she said. We've heard whispers of a human and a Malone warrior working together. I never thought I'd see it with my own eyes. Caleb and Lara exchanged glances before explaining their mission. Dr. Zira listened intently, her eyes widening. I've studied human culture in secret for years, she revealed. I believe your species and ours could achieve greatness together. I want to help. With Dr. Zira's assistance, their plan took shape. She provided crucial information about the communication hub's defenses and offered to guide them through the complex security systems. As they prepared for the final push to the hub, reports came in of the Malone fleet nearing Earth. Time was running out. Caleb, Lara, Dr. Zira, and a small group of Malin rebels set out under the cover of darkness. They navigated through heavily guarded territories, using Lara's knowledge and Dr. Zira's technical expertise to avoid detection. As they crested a hill, the communication hub came into view, a massive structure overflowing with antennas and sensor arrays. Korg's forces patrolled the perimeter, their weapons at the ready. Caleb turned to his unlikely allies, dedication etched on his face. "This is it," he said. "Everything we've fought for comes down to this moment." Lara nodded, her massive hand gently resting on Caleb's shoulder. "Together," she said, "we will reshape the future of both our species." As they began their approach to the hub, the sky lit up with the telltale signs of orbital combat. The Malon fleet had engaged Earth's defenses. The clock was ticking. Ticking. The distant flashes of battle illuminated the night sky, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. Caleb, Lara, Dr. Zira, and their small band of Malon rebels crouched behind a rocky outcropping, surveying the imposing structure before them. The communication hub rose from the ground like a colossal monolith, its antennas and arrays stretching towards the stars. "There," Dr. Zira whispered, pointing to a cluster of guards near the main entrance. "The checkpoint." Lara's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation. Too many for a frontal assault. We need a distraction. Dr. Zira's eyes lit up. "I have an idea." She pulled out a small device from her pack and began tinkering with it. "If I can overload the nearby power conduits, it should create enough chaos for us to slip through." Caleb nodded, impressed by the Malone scientist's ingenuity. "Do it!" Moments later, a series of explosions rocked the perimeter. Alarms blared as guards rushed towards the source of the disturbance, leaving the entrance vulnerable. "Now!" Lara hissed, scooping up Caleb and sprinting towards the building. The others followed close behind, their massive forms providing cover for the smaller human. Inside, they encountered a maze of corridors and chambers designed for beings 3 times Caleb's size. Yet what initially seemed a disadvantage soon proved otherwise. As Malon's security forces converged on their position, Caleb's agility allowed him to duck and weave through spaces too small for their pursuers. "This way," he called, spotting a maintenance shaft barely large enough for him to squeeze through. Lara and the others provided cover fire as Caleb shimmied into the opening. The shaft was a tight fit, filled with pulsing cables and humming machinery. Caleb inched forward, using his smaller size to access control panels and junction boxes along the way. With each manipulation, he disrupted security systems and opened paths for his allies. Meanwhile, Lara faced wave after wave of Malone soldiers. Her combat training shone as she engaged multiple opponents at once, her massive fists striking with precision and power. Yet even her formidable skills were tested as reinforcements poured in. "Caleb," she called out, her voice strained as she grappled with 2 guards. "We need that route cleared." "Almost there," Caleb's voice echoed from within the walls. A moment later, a series of doors hissed open, revealing a clear path to the central control room. As they fought their way forward, alarms blared throughout the facility. On view screens lining the walls, they caught glimpses of the battle raging above Earth. Malon ships filled the sky, their massive forms dwarfing human cities below. In orbit, General Korg watched the invasion unfold with grim satisfaction. His command ship's bridge was a flurry of activity as officers relayed orders and monitored the attack's progress. "Sir," a subordinate approached, his expression troubled. "We've detected an intrusion at the main communication hub on the homeworld." Korg's eyes narrowed. "Show me?" The view screen flickered, revealing security footage of Caleb and Lara fighting their way through the facility. Korg's massive fist clenched in rage. "Impossible," he growled. "They should not have made it this far." His mind raced, calculating the potential threat to his plans. With a snarl, he made his decision. "Begin the final assault on Earth. We end this now, before they can interfere." On Earth, Colonel Steele's voice crackled over the comm system of his Titan suit. "All units, brace for impact. They're coming in hot." The sky darkened as thousands of Malon ships descended, their massive forms blotting out the sun. Titan suits across the globe engaged, their sleek forms darting between buildings and launching volleys of energy weapons. Steel gritted his teeth as he piloted his suit through the chaos of New York City. A Malin dropship crashed nearby, disgorging a squad of hulking alien warriors. The colonel's targeting system locked on, and he unleashed a barrage of missiles. "Keep fighting," he shouted to his troops. "We hold the line here." Back in the communication hub, Caleb and Lara burst into the central control room. Banks of computers lined the walls, each sized for Malone operators. At the center stood a massive console, its surface covered in alien symbols and pulsing lights. "This is it," Caleb breathed, approaching the main terminal. His fingers hovered over the controls, hesitating as he encountered an unexpected obstacle. A holographic interface sprang to life, demanding biometric authentication. Lara stepped forward, placing her hand on the scanner. The system flashed red, denying access. "It doesn't recognize me anymore," she growled in frustration. "My command codes must have been revoked." Caleb's mind raced, searching for a solution. His eyes darted between Lara and the console, an idea forming. "What if we combine our DNA?" he suggested. "Human and Malon working together. It's what this whole mission has been about, right?" Lara's eyes widened in understanding. She nodded, extending her massive hand. Caleb placed his palm against hers, their skin contrasting sharply in size and texture. Together, they pressed their joined hands to the scanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a series of chirps and flashes, the system accepted the unconventional input. Screens came to life around them, granting access to the broadcast controls. Caleb's fingers flew across the interface, compiling data and preparing the transmission. "We need to show them the truth," he muttered, pulling up testimonies from Dr. Zira and other Milan dissenters. "If we can just get this message out." A thunderous explosion rocked the room. The doors burst inward as a squad of elite Malin soldiers stormed in, their weapons trained on Caleb and Lara. "Keep working," Lara shouted, interposing herself between Caleb and the attackers. "I'll hold them off." What followed was a whirlwind of combat. Lara moved with a grace that belied her size, her years of training evident in every strike encounter. But the odds were stacked against her. For every soldier she felled, two more seemed to take their place. Caleb worked frantically, acutely aware of the battle raging behind him. The sounds of combat mixed with the beeps and whirs of the console as he raced to complete the transmission. Just as his finger hovered over the broadcast button, a new presence filled the room. The air seemed to crackle with energy as a massive form materialized near the entrance. General Korg stood before them, his bulk filling the doorway. His eyes locked onto Caleb, burning with a mixture of rage and contempt. "You!" he growled, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "You dare to threaten everything we've built." Caleb's hand remained poised over the controls, mere inches from victory. Lara, battered and bleeding from her fight with the elite squad, placed herself between Caleb and the towering general. The room crackled with tension as human, Malon warrior, and Malon general faced each other. Outside, the battle for Earth hung in the balance. The fate of two civilizations teetered on the edge of a knife, waiting to see which way it would fall. Fall. In that moment of tense standoff, Caleb's mind raced. His eyes darted between General Korg's hulking form and the console behind him. Time seemed to slow as he made his decision. With a swift motion, Caleb lunged for the console, his fingers flying across the alien interface. Before anyone could react, he activated the emergency broadcast system. A high-pitched whine filled the room as every screen blazed to life. "What have you done?" Korg bellowed, his massive fist swinging towards Caleb. But the human was too quick. He ducked under the general's arm, using his smaller size to his advantage. The Malan's fist smashed into the console, sending sparks flying but failing to halt the transmission. Across both Earth and the Malon fleet, the prepared message began to play. Dr. Zira's face appeared on screens, her voice steady as she spoke of the truth behind the conflict. Images of Malon protests flashed by, showing the growing unrest among their people. In the skies above Earth, the battle froze. Colonel Steele, his Titan suit scorched and dented, stared at the broadcast playing inside his helmet. "All units, hold fire," he ordered, his voice hoarse from shouting commands. "Something's happening." Malon ships hung motionless in the air, their crews transfixed by the unexpected transmission. On the bridge of one destroyer, a captain turned to his second-in-command. "Are we on the right side of this war?" Back in the control room, Caleb weaved between towering banks of equipment, staying just out of Korg's reach. The general's face contorted with rage as he attempted to smash the broadcasting devices. "You'll ruin everything," Korg roared, his massive bulk working against him in the cramped space. He stumbled, crashing into a row of computers. Lara, battered but unbowed, dispatched the last of the elite guards with a well-placed strike. She spun to face Korg, placing herself between the general and Caleb. Blood trickled from a cut above her eye, but her stance was unwavering. "It's over, Korg," she growled. "The truth is out." On Earth, Steele's Titan suit darted between buildings, leading a precision strike against key Milan command ships. The confusion in the enemy ranks was palpable. Some ships attempted to return fire, while others began to pull back. "Press the advantage," Steele shouted to his squad. "Take out their command and control." Across the Milan homeworld, the streets filled with protesters. Dr. Zira stood at the head of a massive crowd, her voice amplified by makeshift speakers. "No more war! No more lies!" The chant spread like wildfire through the assembled Malone. In orbit, a group of Malone officers huddled on the bridge of their flagship. "We can't ignore this," one said, gesturing to the broadcast still playing on their screens. "Korg has led us astray." With a series of quick commands, they deactivated the general's personal shields and weapon systems. In the control room, Korg's armor suddenly powered down, leaving him vulnerable. Lara saw her opening. She launched herself at the general, her smaller size allowing her to maneuver in ways he couldn't match. A flurry of strikes left Korg reeling. With a final, powerful blow, she sent him crashing to the ground. Caleb rushed forward, using strips torn from his own clothing to bind Korg's massive hands. The general struggled, but without his powered armor, he was no match for Lara's combat skills. As Korg lay defeated, a new message flashed across the screens. The newly formed Malon Leadership Council appeared, calling for an immediate ceasefire and peace negotiations with Earth. Colonel Steele, his Titan suit hovering above the ruins of a city, received the transmission. He hesitated for a moment, then opened a channel to all Earth forces. "Stand down," he ordered. "Ceasefire is in effect pending confirmation from command." In the control room, Caleb and Lara exchanged a look of disbelief. They had done it. The invasion was over. But as the adrenaline of battle faded, new challenges emerged. Reports flooded in of human populations still in shock, wary of their would-be conquerors. On Malin news channels, pundits debated the sudden change in regime, with some calling for a continuation of Korg's hardline policies. Caleb sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. "What now?" he asked, looking up at Lara. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle despite her size. "Now, we build." This was just the beginning. As if in answer to her words, a message appeared on the main screen. Earth's leaders were requesting Caleb's presence as part of a diplomatic delegation to the Milan homeworld. Simultaneously, the Milan Council asked for Lara to serve as their envoy to Earth. They shared a smile, ready to face this new challenge together. But before they could speak, another alert blared through the system. Caleb's eyes widened as he read the report. "A Malin splinter group," he said, his voice tense. "They've seized control of some kind of superweapon. If they activate it—" Lara's expression hardened. "Then we have no time to waste." "Waste?" Lara's voice was grim as she processed the implications of the report. Caleb nodded, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "We need to inform both governments immediately. This could derail everything we've accomplished." As if on cue, the communication console lit up with incoming transmissions from Earth and the Milan homeworld. The newly formed leadership on both sides had already been alerted to the crisis. Within hours, Caleb and Lara found themselves at the center of a hastily assembled joint task force. The peace negotiations they had fought so hard for were put on hold as both species recognized the immediate threat posed by the Milan extremist group. In a secure conference room, holographic projections of Earth and Milan leaders flickered to life. Caleb stepped forward, his diplomatic experience evident as he addressed the gathered officials. "We're dealing with a faction that sees our unity as a threat," he explained, gesturing to the intelligence reports scrolling across the room's main screen. They've seized control of a superweapon codenamed Nova Eradicator. Our sources indicate it has the capability to trigger supernovas. A murmur of concern rippled through the assembled leaders. Lara moved to stand beside Caleb, her towering form a stark contrast to his human stature. The weapon is located in a fortified asteroid base, she added, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The extremist group is led by a fanatical Malon named Vex. Their goal is nothing less than the destruction of both Earth and the Malon homeworld. As the implications sank in, the room erupted into a flurry of activity. Plans were quickly drawn up, with Earth and Malon military leaders working side by side for the first time in history. Caleb found himself appointed as the human liaison for the mission, his unique understanding of Malon culture deemed invaluable. Lara, with her extensive knowledge of Malon weapon systems, was chosen as the Malon representative. As the meeting concluded, a familiar face appeared on the main screen. Colonel Steele, his features etched with persistence, saluted the assembled leaders. "I volunteer to lead a Titan suit team for this operation," he stated, his voice carrying the weight of command. "We'll need our best technology for this one." The Malon Council quickly agreed, offering the use of one of their advanced stealth cruisers for the approach. As the details of the mission came together, Caleb couldn't help but marvel at how quickly former enemies had become allies in the face of a common threat. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Caleb and Lara worked tirelessly to coordinate between the human and Malon forces, bridging cultural gaps and smoothing over misunderstandings. On the eve of their departure, Caleb found himself in the hangar bay of the Malon stealth cruiser. Around him, Titan Suet pilots ran final checks on their equipment, while Malon technicians made last-minute adjustments to the ship's systems. The atmosphere was tense, with sideways glances and muffled comments revealing the lingering distrust between the two species. A human mechanic fumbled with an unfamiliar Malon tool, muttering under his breath about alien junk. Nearby, a Malon soldier towered over a group of human pilots, his posture rigid with barely concealed disdain. Caleb sighed, realizing that their greatest challenge might not be the mission itself, but getting the team to work together. He caught Lara's eye across the hangar, and she nodded in silent understanding. They had their work cut out for them. As the stealth cruiser slipped away from the Malon homeworld, Caleb stood on the bridge, watching the stars stretch into lines as they entered faster than light travel. The ship hummed with nervous energy as they hurtled towards their target. Days later, they emerged from FTL on the outskirts of a remote star system. The asteroid base loomed before them, a jagged silhouette against the backdrop of an alien sun. "Activating stealth systems," the Malon pilot announced, his fingers dancing across the control panel. Colonel Steele's voice crackled over the comm system. "Titan Squad, prepare for deployment. We're going to clear a path through that minefield." Caleb watched on the main screen as the Titan suits launched from the cruiser's bay. The sleek humanoid forms of the Earth's most advanced combat technology looked almost delicate next to the massive Malon ship. With practiced precision, the Titan squad began to navigate the treacherous minefield. Steele led the charge, his suit weaving between the deadly orbs with incredible agility. One by one, the mines were disarmed or safely detonated, carving a narrow corridor through the defensive grid. As the last mine exploded in a brilliant flash, Steele's voice filled the bridge. "Path clear. You're good to proceed, cruiser." The Malon ship glided forward, following the trail blazed by the Titan suits. As they approached the asteroid, Lara leaned over the sensor console, her eyes narrowed in concentration. "There," she said, pointing to a flicker in the base's energy signature. "A weakness in their sensor grid. If we time it right, we can slip the Titan suits through undetected." Caleb relayed the information to Steele, who acknowledged with a curt, "Roger that." Moments later, the Titan suits disappeared from the cruiser's sensors as they made their stealthy approach to the asteroid's surface. With the first phase of their plan complete, Caleb felt a mix of relief and apprehension. They had made it this far, but the real challenge lay ahead. As he prepared to join the infiltration team, he caught sight of his reflection in a nearby console. The face that looked back at him was determined, focused, ready for whatever came next. The airlock hissed open, and Caleb stepped out onto the asteroid's surface. Lara emerged behind him, her massive form casting a long shadow in the dim light. Around them, Titan suits and Milan soldiers assembled, an unlikely alliance preparing to face an unimaginable threat. Steele's voice crackled over the comm. "Let's move out. We've got a superweapon to disable." As the team began their advance towards the base's entrance, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The smooth metal walls of the facility loomed before them, holding secrets and threats they had yet to discover. As they approached the entrance, a sudden explosion rocked the facility, sending tremors through the asteroid's surface. The team stumbled, regaining their footing as debris rained down around them. "That wasn't us," Steele's voice crackled over the comm. "Something's happening inside." Caleb and Lara exchanged a glance, their suspicions confirmed. The extremists were making their move. "We need to get in there now," Caleb urged, his heart pounding as he realized the stakes had just gotten higher. The team moved swiftly, breaching the outer defenses with a combination of Titan suit firepower and Lara's brute strength. As they pushed deeper into the base, alarms blared, and the corridors filled with acrid smoke. Rounding a corner, they encountered fierce resistance from a group of Malon extremists. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as Steele's Titan suits engaged the enemy. Caleb ducked behind a fallen support beam, his mind racing to formulate a plan. "We need to split up," he shouted over the din of battle. "Lara and I will try to reach the control room. Colonel, can you lead your team to secure the power core?" Steele's acknowledgement came amidst the sound of his suit's weapons firing. "Roger that. Be careful in there, you two." As the Titan suits pressed forward, creating a diversion, Caleb and Lara slipped away down a side passage. They moved quickly through the labyrinthine corridors, Lara's knowledge of Malon base layouts proving invaluable. Suddenly, a massive blast door slammed shut behind them, cutting off their retreat. Ahead, another door sealed, trapping them in a narrow section of hallway. "It's a containment protocol," Lara growled, her massive fists pounding against the unyielding metal. "They know we're here." Caleb's eyes darted around the enclosed space, searching for a way out. His gaze fell on a small maintenance duct near the floor, barely visible behind a panel. "Lara, look," he said, pointing to the opening. "I think I can fit through there. It might lead to the control room." The Milan warrior assessed the tiny entrance, her expression grim. "It's too small for me, but you could make it. I'll create a distraction here while you find a way to open these doors." Caleb hesitated, not wanting to leave his companion behind. Lara placed a massive hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. "Go," she urged. "We don't have much time." Nodding, Caleb pried open the panel and squeezed into the cramped maintenance duct. The metal was cold against his skin as he crawled forward, guided by the faint glow of status lights. Behind him, he heard the sound of tearing metal as Lara began to dismantle the corridor, triggering alarms throughout the base. The cacophony faded as Caleb pushed deeper into the duct system, navigating by instinct and his limited knowledge of Malon base layouts. After what felt like hours of crawling through the claustrophobic passages, Caleb emerged into a dimly lit storage area. He moved cautiously, aware that he was deep in enemy territory. A sound from behind a stack of crates made him freeze. A lone Malon guard rounded the corner, his eyes widening in surprise at the sight of the human intruder. Caleb's mind raced, recalling the combat techniques Lara had taught him during their journey. As the guard lunged forward, Caleb ducked under the Malon's massive arm, using the alien's momentum against him. With a series of quick strikes to vulnerable points, Caleb managed to incapacitate the much larger opponent. Breathing heavily, Caleb retrieved the guard's weapon and access card. He glanced at the unconscious Malon, a pang of remorse mixing with his tenacity. This wasn't the time for doubt. Using the stolen access card, Caleb made his way towards the launch bay. As he approached, he heard the low hum of powerful machinery and the excited voices of Malon extremists. Peering around a corner, he caught his first glimpse of the Nova Eradicator. The superweapon was a massive construct of alien technology, pulsing with an otherworldly energy that made Caleb's hair stand on end. At its base, a group of Malon extremists worked feverishly, led by a towering figure Caleb assumed must be Vex. Caleb's mind raced as he assessed the situation. He needed to get closer to the Nova Eradicator, but the launch bay was a hive of activity. Using the cluttered environment to his advantage, he began to move stealthily around the perimeter of the room. As he crept closer to the superweapon, Caleb's trained eye caught a glimpse of its inner workings. There, nestled among the alien technology, was a surprisingly vulnerable cooling system. If he could overload it... Caleb's planning was interrupted by a sudden commotion at the far end of the launch bay. The massive doors burst open, revealing Lara and Colonel Steele's team. The Titan suits poured into the room, engaging the extremists in a chaotic firefight. Seizing the opportunity provided by the distraction, Caleb sprinted towards the Nova Eradicator. He had almost reached the control panel when a massive shadow fell over him. "Not so fast, human," Vex's voice boomed from above. Caleb dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the Milan leader's grasp. He rolled to his feet, finding himself in a deadly game of cat and mouse among the towering equipment of the launch bay. As Vex pursued him, Caleb caught sight of Lara engaging a group of extremists. She fought with incredible skill, but the sheer number of opponents was overwhelming her. Colonel Steele, noticing Lara's predicament, directed his Titan suit to intervene. The combined might of the human technology and Malon's strength began to turn the tide. Caleb used this moment to make a final dash for the Nova Eradicator's controls. His fingers flew over the alien interface, struggling to understand its complexities. He realized that simply sabotaging the device could lead to a catastrophic explosion. Instead, Caleb began to rewrite the targeting systems, a task made incredibly difficult by the unfamiliar technology and the chaos of battle surrounding him. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked, acutely aware that every second counted. Behind him, he heard the sounds of struggle as Lara and Steele finally subdued Vex. But their victory was short-lived. "It's too late," Vex's voice rang out, filled with fanatical glee. "The Nova Eradicator is armed and ready to fire." Alarms blared throughout the launch bay as the superweapon hummed to life. Caleb's fingers moved in a blur, making the final adjustments to his hastily crafted program. As the Nova Eradicator reached full power, Caleb input the last command. The entire base seemed to hold its breath as the weapon activated. A brilliant beam of energy erupted from the Nova Eradicator, but instead of streaking towards a populated world, it fired harmlessly into the empty void of space. The raw power dissipated across the cosmos, leaving behind nothing but a spectacular light show. For a moment, silence fell over the launch bay. Then a new set of alarms began to wail. "He's triggered some kind of self-destruct," Steele shouted, his Titan suit's sensors detecting the rapidly building energy signature. Caleb's relief at averting disaster was short-lived, as he realized their ordeal was not nearly finished. The asteroid base was beginning to shake, systems overloading all around them. "We need to get out of here now," Lara bellowed, already moving towards the exit. As Caleb sprinted to join his companions, he knew they faced a desperate race against time. The base was falling apart around them, and their escape route was far from clear. With Vex and his followers in custody and crucial evidence of the extremist plot in hand, they had to find a way off the doomed asteroid before it was too late. The team plunged into the collapsing corridors, the ground beneath their feet growing more unstable with each passing second. Caleb's mind raced, searching for a plan as they fought their way towards what they hoped would be salvation. The team plunged into the collapsing corridors, the ground beneath their feet growing more unstable with each passing second. Caleb's mind raced, searching for a plan as they fought their way towards what they hoped would be their salvation. Alarms blared throughout the disintegrating asteroid base, their urgent wails adding to the chaos. Caleb led the way, his smaller size allowing him to dart ahead and scout for safe passages through the crumbling structure. "This way," he shouted, gesturing towards a relatively stable-looking corridor. Lara and Colonel Steele followed close behind, herding the rest of the team through the treacherous path. As they rounded a corner, a massive support beam crashed down, narrowly missing Lara. She effortlessly caught the beam, holding it up to allow the others to pass. "Go!" she growled, her muscles straining under the weight. They pressed on, dodging falling debris and leaping over widening cracks in the floor. The base groaned and buckled around them, as if protesting their escape. Finally, they reached the hangar bay, hope surging through their veins at the sight of their Malon stealth cruiser. But that hope was quickly dashed as they saw the ship crushed beneath a tangle of fallen support beams. "No," Caleb breathed, his heart sinking. Colonel Steele's voice cut through the despair. "The Titan suits, they're our only chance now." Without hesitation, the team sprung into action. The Titan pilots quickly powered up their suits, while Steele outlined his plan. "We'll carry the Malon soldiers and Caleb," he explained, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "Our suits' enhanced propulsion systems should be able to break free of the asteroid's gravity." As they prepared to launch, a deafening explosion rocked the hangar. The blast sent shockwaves through the floor, knocking several team members off their feet. When the dust settled, they saw with horror that their primary exit was now sealed off by tons of rubble. Panic began to set in, but Caleb's eyes darted around the hangar, searching for another way out. His gaze fell upon a small maintenance airlock tucked away in a corner. "There!" he shouted, pointing. "We can use that airlock." They rushed towards their last hope of escape, only to face a new problem. The Titan suits, while powerful, were too large to fit through the narrow opening. For a moment, silence fell over the group, as the reality of their situation sank in. Then Caleb's eyes lit up with an idea. "We can disassemble the suits," he said, his words tumbling out rapidly. "Take them apart just enough to fit through the airlock, then reassemble them in space." Colonel Steele nodded grimly. "It's risky, but it's our only shot. Let's move." The team worked with frantic energy, their hands flying over the complex machinery of the Titan suits. Lara's immense strength proved invaluable as she helped to carefully separate the massive components. Time seemed to stretch as they worked, each second marked by another tremor or the sound of distant explosions. Sweat poured down their faces, muscles aching from the effort, but they pushed on. One by one, they managed to squeeze the disassembled suits through the narrow airlock. Caleb coordinated the effort, his quick mind keeping track of each piece in person. As the base's reactor reached critical levels, the whine of overloading systems growing louder by the second, they finally got the last suit through. With no time to spare, they reassembled the suits in the vacuum of space, each movement precise despite their desperation. Just as the final connections were made, the asteroid base erupted in a spectacular explosion. The shockwave caught them off guard, sending the group tumbling through the void. Caleb felt a moment of pure terror as he spun uncontrollably, the vastness of space threatening to swallow him. Then he felt Lara's massive hand wrap around him, pulling him close to her body as she used herself as a shield against the debris hurtling past them. The Titan suits struggled to stabilize, their pilots fighting against the chaotic forces buffeting them. For several heart-stopping moments, it seemed as if they might be torn apart by the violence of the explosion. Gradually, the turbulence subsided. As the dust settled, the team regrouped, floating in the eerie silence of space. They watched as the last remnants of the asteroid base and the Nova Eradicator technology disappeared into the cosmic expanse, leaving behind only scattered debris and fading energy signatures. Caleb looked around at their ragtag group, humans in Titan suits, Malon warriors, and himself, a small human at the center of it all. They had survived, but their ordeal was nowhere near the end. Colonel Steele's voice crackled over the comm system, distorted but audible. "Status report. Is everyone accounted for?" As the team checked in one by one, Caleb realized with a sinking feeling that their communication systems had been damaged in the escape. They were alive but stranded in the vastness of space with limited resources and no way to call for help. Lara's deep voice rumbled next to him. "We need a plan, human. We cannot stay here." Caleb nodded, his mind already racing through possibilities. He turned to face the group, commitment etched on his features. Their next challenge was clear. They had to find their way back to civilization, navigating the dangers of space with their damaged suits and dwindling supplies. As he began to outline their options, Caleb couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and excitement. They had come this far together, in a seemingly impossible way. Now they faced perhaps their greatest test yet, a journey through the cosmic wilderness, with only their wits, technology, and newfound trust in each other to guide them home.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.